Hey, welcome to another episode of Asexualise. My Sexual Life This is a place to be for education about asexuality. So subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. So happy Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month. Day 6 we're on now. Celebrating our diversity across the asexual spectrum and our differences within it. Just like the Asexual Perspectives book. Don't forget to grab a copy of this on Amazon if you haven't already done so. Yes, let's crack on. So today we're discussing how to discover if you're asexual. And in order to do this, I want to invite you to listen to some of the stories in Asexual Perspectives book so that you can hear how other people find out they're asexual and see if you can relate yourself. So this is Victoria's story. How did you discover you are asexual? I had recently been part of a conversation in which everyone described their sex life, who they found hot, and since when they had been sexually active. I felt so alien during that conversation that I felt horrible all day. All the feelings I had stored up about being different, childish, or weird started resurfacing. It got so bad that I got drunk and poured my heart out to a friend and basically asked what the hell was wrong with me. She suggested I might be demisexual. During this conversation, I heard the word asexual and asexual spectrum for the first time. The amount of relief I felt after this conversation is indescribable. The amount of sorry, I was going to repeat that again because it sounded so good. The amount of relief I felt after this conversation is indescribable. I felt such relief like that as well when I discovered I'm asexual. Can you relate? After that conversation, I spent about 2 to 3 weeks researching asexuality and trying to figure out where I fall on the asexual spectrum. Ironically, it was after reading a demisexual's account of what sexual attraction felt like, I began to identify as fully asexual. So if you're a bit confused as to what demisexual is and fully asexual means, fully asexual or pure asexual who is someone who doesn't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever. They don't have that innate need, desire, urge, or want for partnered sexual intercourse. A demisexual person is someone on the asexual spectrum, but the more sexual end of it. And the demisexual person falls under the grey asexual spectrum rather than the pure asexuals. So with a demisexual person, they can only experience sexual attraction when a deep emotional bond has been formed, usually maintained and sustained. Otherwise, they don't experience sexual attraction whatsoever and are very much the same as pure asexuals in the sense they don't experience any sexual attraction at all. With demisexuals, it's not a case of a choice of them preferring to have a deep emotional connection before getting sexually involved with someone. It's a case of they cannot usually partake in sex unless a deep emotional bond has been formed because they do not experience sexual attraction. And a lot of the time for demisexuals, they need to have the emotional connection before they have sex, as a thing they've got to have rather than a preference, because otherwise you just don't feel sexual attraction. Sappho's story. How did you discover you were asexual? This is again in Asexual Perspectives, page 141 if you've got the book at home. I was at a sleepover with my two best friends. They're both gay trans men, but at the time we were all young and questioning. We turned off the lights and sat talking in the pitch black. We always found we were we always found it easier to talk about the more taboo topics that way, and we were talking about crushes. When it was my turn to spill the beans, to hear that I never fancied when it was my time to spill the beans about my angsty childhood heartache, they were both shocked to hear that I'd never fancied anyone. One of them told me I might be asexual. I didn't even know what it meant at the time, but I looked it up and eventually decided it was a description that fitted me. So I think this is so important, right? Because it seems like from both of these conversations that it was only talking to other people about asexuality as to why these two people decided or understood and found out that they're asexual. And that makes me feel quite happy, you know, that I have heard that they heard it from someone else, because it means that asexuality is heard of by some people, and some people do talk about it, which is healthy. It's healthy to have these conversations, you know. And I think, you know, it's such a relief when you do discover you're asexual. I remember back in 2014 when I first found out I'm asexual, and I went to the forums on asexuality.org, and I was like, oh my gosh, there are other people like me who desire a serious relationship full of romance without sex. I know not every asexual is romantic, right? But I did see some on there that were romantic and wanted a romantic relationship without sex. I just felt such a relief. I honestly thought that I was the only one in the world, planet, and universe that desired a romantic relationship without sex. I thought I was going to be alone forever. I thought I would never have anyone who understood me in that way. I felt so alone in that sense, you know, like bewildered and lost. Like, what was I going to do from now on with relationships and things like that, you know? And so it was really difficult. And then when I discovered I'm asexual and there's a huge load of people online, thousands of people around the world that are asexual, I was just blown away. I'm like, my God. You know, when you feel like you've got a savior come to save you and sweep you off your feet into a whirlwind of possibilities and realizations that you're not the only one like you, and there's just thousands of others, and you're like, why isn't this heard of? Why haven't people mentioned this before to you, to me, you know? And I was just so happy when I found out there's other people like me. Such a relief. So Adair Gearhart story. How did you discover you're asexual? This again is in Asexual Perspectives book. I was attending an LGBTQIA group when another member mentioned they were asexual. I asked them about it and what it meant. They explained it to me, and all sorts of bells and whistles went off in my head. I had previously thought that maybe I was just gay, but since I hadn't come out yet, I was still trying to pretend to be heterosexual. I thought I just wasn't attracted to the gender I was forcing myself to have sex with, and my lack of experience with other genders was the explanation for my lack of desire. Now, again, I think it's good that they're around other people that knew about asexuality, and even another member mentioned they were asexual in this case, right? And I think when people do start talking about the characteristic traits of asexuals, if you are notably asexual, then it will be easier for you to recognize yourself. So, for example, a desire not to have sex. Other people saying they're getting off with so-and-so, they're making out with so-and-so, and you be like, what? Why are people wasting their time talking about that? No desire to lust after anyone. No desire to do sexual acts with someone. Maybe wanting closeness, affection, and sensuality, but being really repulsed by sex itself, and not understanding what the big deal is about sex, not understanding why people have got such a fascination with genitalia and sex itself. All these type of things are signs you very well might be or are asexual. And I think it's important to note that a lot of people do believe or think they're heterosexual before they found out they're asexual. Like, I thought I was heterosexual for years. I had no idea asexuality was a thing till I found out that I am asexual in 2014. Now, looking back, it's obvious to me that I was always asexual and born like it, but didn't realize it when I look back at all my past relationships, because I never looked at any of my exes, even the ones I loved, and thought I want sex with them. Like, I would avoid that type of thing usually, say no or avoid it or do less of it than I was expected to do. And I would prefer to do other things in the relationship, like kiss and cuddle. At that point, I like touching as well, but I wasn't really interested in the sex. I have had sex in the past, but it's not my thing. And one guy I actually split up with because the sex was so boring. I didn't know I was asexual then, but I just couldn't put up with the relationship. Like, he cooked me food, which I liked. He was very hot aesthetically. He was so good looking aesthetically, really beautiful foreign guy. And I was really super attracted to him, as in I wanted to kiss him. But I couldn't stand the sex part. I was just, like, so bored. It hurt and it just wasn't a good experience. And I just was so bored. He was like, "Stick it in, guy." And I'm like, "This is just so boring. I can't stand this." It was just awful for me to be in that relationship and have that experience. My last ex, long-term ex, was good at sex, because there's a myth about asexuals are asexual because you haven't had good sex. I have had good sex and bad sex, but I'm not interested in sex. I have been sex-free now since 2011, and I have to say it's beautiful. I don't need sex. I don't want it. I don't crave it. I don't go after it. And if I look back at the relationships I had from when I was 6 years old, my first heterosexual relationship at 6, even then the guy was into sexual exploration. I felt totally invaded by that. I hated it. I didn't like it. I just liked kissing at 6 years old, passionate kissing, which is not normal, I know, but that's the way it was for me. So I'm crystal clear that I was always asexual and born that way, but didn't realize it. And it was because society sold me a lie. And that is that I was heterosexual when I wasn't. I was, in fact, asexual and always been asexual, or hetero, asexual, if you want to call it that. And I'm proud to know that. I'm proud that I'm so damn confident in my asexuality that I know categorically my thoughts and feelings over the years mean I'm definitely asexual. And I came across one of my ex-boyfriends years ago in one of my old jobs. He's a police officer now. And he came into the office of a retail store I used to work at because he was doing police work. But he started talking to me. And then I said to him about the fact I'm asexual. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I always knew that about you." And I'm thinking, why didn't he tell me that then? He's basically saying it's obvious. And he was a guy that asked me to go away for a weekend with him. Like, he was my boyfriend for about night. One night, people, but then he became my friend after he put the phone down on me, saying, "If you want anyone who really loves you, then let me know," and put the phone down on me. And then eventually he just got to be my friend. But he was not a good guy actually with women. He was a very bad womanizer at one point in his life. And I didn't realize that he would change, but he did change. He's settled down with a wife and kids now, got a respectable police officer job, and really changed. So some guys do change miraculously. And so that's good that he's changed and settled down and got wife and kids, and he's happy and got a good job. And his mum I always got on well with, because I worked for his mother. So for a photography company his mum ran. So his mum's really nice. But I remember him asking me that time about going away for a weekend with him, and I was just like, "No, I really don't want the sex." I know that's what he was going to be after, and I just, alarm bells rang. And then I kissed him and realized the kiss felt like a lizard kiss, and I just felt like I should be friends with that guy and nothing more. So sometimes just from kissing someone, you can understand whether they're just meant to be your friend or not. So I think some people just understand from certain experiences in their life that they are asexual as well. I think the same principle applies to asexuality, in the sense that you can just understand that you're asexual sometimes, but the way you react to romantic situations or to sexual situations or to intimate situations I think you can tell by the way that you are with other people and your instant reaction. If your instant reaction is, oh my God, they're going to want sex. Oh, I can't be near them. And it gets quite scary because you just don't want the sex. And you're just thinking, oh my gosh, this is so repulsive. You're likely going to be on the asexual spectrum somewhere, because most people, general heterosexual population, if someone talks about going away for a weekend with sex involved, it's like their ears prick up. If you imagine they're a little doggy puppy, ears prick up, but they're not a doggy. But you know what I mean? It's like their eyes light up, their whole persona and body lights up. It's like, oh, sex, 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 you know. Whereas with an asexual person, it's like, oh my Lord, no, thank you. I really don't want that. Help. I want to escape, please. That's at least what it feels like. I mean, obviously, if you're an asexual person who's been in a long-term relationship for a while and your partner's heterosexual, you may want to try sex. Some asexuals who are not sex repulsed do, and that's perfectly fine. I just know that one of the telltale signs is if everyone's raving about sex, or someone asks you to do things that would usually lead to sex, and you're like really standoffish and repulsed by it and really kind of scared and creeped out by it and disgusted by it and by it, then you're likely going to probably be on the asexual spectrum. So Ari's story. How did you discover you're asexual? I saw the term described somewhere on the internet, not Avon itself. I instantly connected with it. It was this feeling of, oh, here are words to more elegantly and efficiently explain the concepts I figured out about myself when I was 16. So yeah, I think it's so good when you find words to describe yourself and you're like having an epiphany and like, oh my gosh, now I know who I am. Now I have the words to describe myself. Now I have the words to describe my feelings, emotions, thoughts, actions, desires. And now I've got my sense of identity more. Because sometimes as an asexual person, you may feel very left out of society. You may feel very weird and strange, like an alien around people. People may not understand you. And you might feel alienated. And you might feel a huge disconnect from yourself and the world around you and from yourself and other people. And a lot of the time, this is because the majority of the population is still heterosexual or thinks they're heterosexual rather than asexual, bisexual, pansexual, homosexual. There's probably, I think, a lot more bisexuals, for example. I think a lot of guys are not just into women, they're into guys as well. But I think they keep that hidden. And the amount of women I see going into toilets together in pubs and clubs, I'm like, I would never do that. I don't want to see other women's genitalia and bits. Do you know what I mean? So I found that very weird behavior because I'm not at all geared towards sexual stuff, and I find that very weird personally. Each to their own though. So Isadora's story. How did you discover you're asexual? I was browsing posts on LiveJournal and came across a post about asexuality with a link to the asexual LJ community. After looking up the definition, reading some of the members' posts, I'll start that again. After looking up the definition and reading some of the members' posts, I realized this was describing me. And again, that moment of when you hear what asexuality is and you realize, oh my gosh, that fits me. That's me. That's me. That's me. I think it's so relieving, and it's so good to know that there's other people in the world. You know what I mean? That you're not alone, that you're not in fact an alien. Well, you might be an alien, feel like you're an alien in this planet in the sense that you don't actually associate or relate to a lot of the people that are in it. But if you're an alien, you're an ace alien, right? Us aces need to stick together. And you just realize that there's other people on planet Earth like you, and you're like, oh, so good. Right. How did you discover your asexual? South Americans Anonymous's story. I never felt any sexual desire towards any crush or icon I ever had, but I never really I never really questioned it. I started questioning my gender, and I found out I was not only asexual but repulsed by sex. I always found sex gross. I always found genitals disgusting. I find my genitals disgusting, and I always felt awkward when people talked about sex near me or tried to seduce me in that way. So, as I mentioned on yesterday's live stream, some asexuals do masturbate, and that is perfectly fine. We shouldn't be ashamed of touching our own bodies. And the fact that society keeps promoting for other people to give us satisfaction with our own bodies rather than ourselves is disgusting, in my opinion, and totally screwed up. We should be proud to touch our own bodies and not just expect to get sexual pleasure or satisfaction or all our happiness from our own body through someone else touching it. We should be encouraged to love and touch our own bodies as well, if that's what we want to do. But I used to be very repulsed by masturbation and thought it was disgusting, and I would never do that years ago. And so I totally understand where South American Anonymous's story perspective is coming from. And I personally understand about the genitalia being disgusting. I really don't like the male genitalia, even though I have had sex in the past. I'd rather not look at that. I discovered in my last relationship that I could do some touching that I didn't think I could do, but when it came to looking, yeah, that was really shocking for me. But when it came to looking, I was like, I want to look away, and I was looking away. I'm like, I'm not looking. I'm really not looking because I'm just not interested, and I don't really want to see it. So it's quite shocking for me that I can even touch the guy there because I didn't think I could do that. But in terms of actually looking at it, I would look away. He would notice. In the end, he was like, if it makes you uncomfortable, I just keep my like underwear on, like pants, box. It wasn't really boxer shorts, it was like underwear. So I'm like, yeah. If I didn't want to make him, because he wasn't asexual, I didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable. So if he wanted to do that, I was like, I'll just look away. But I'd rather you keep that on because I'm not interested in looking at that, because I'm really not. So yeah, that was interesting revelation about myself, being okay touching that particular person but not wanting to see that. So yeah, I kind of still prefer touching it through clothes as well, really, but I was okay doing that, which surprised me actually because I didn't think I would be. I don't think I'll be like that with every guy. Samantha G story. How did you discover you're asexual? I always knew asexuality as a sexual orientation existed, but I never knew what it actually was until one day I got curious as to what asexual is and Googled it. Needless to say, I was shocked that it actually fit me. I think that's very important again because when you come to look up asexuality, if you resonate with it, you really usually just think, oh my gosh, that's me. But sometimes people are on the grey end of the asexual spectrum and they don't realize they belong there because they just think they're a little bit different in regards to sex. And maybe they experience sexual attraction, but it's only infrequently with certain people, not that often. And so maybe they think they've got a low sex drive, which they might have, but they might be on the asexual spectrum as well. So asexuals often feel repulsed by sex or indifferent towards sex or not interested in sex. Asexuals would rather do other things than have sex in the main. If there's asexual with a person who's not asexual, it would usually be the person who's not asexual that would instigate the sex. The asexual person usually wouldn't instigate it, even if they're in a relationship with someone who's sexual. Asexual person would more likely not be talking about sex, not be discussing it like at school and college and uni. It would often be other people that were like that discussing it, and the asexuals like, I don't get what the big deal is. I don't understand it. Why is everyone raving about sex? Some asexuals might be repulsed by seeing sex on TV, magazines, and they might be just like, oh, give it a rest. Whereas a heterosexual or other sexual person would be like, oh yeah, I'm so happy to see that person's genitalia or see them stripping off in a movie. Like, I really want to watch that. Love their body. Let's discuss their body. Let's like, be sexually provocative. Let's go and have sex with lots of people. When are you getting the next lot of sex? This is kind of like the contrast. Like, asexuals are more like, I'm not interested in sex. I'm not bothered about sex. I'm indifferent to sex. Sex is meh. Sex is disgusting. So they're more like in general, they're more like got a negative stance towards sex, or not bothered, or can't be bothered with it, or don't want to bother with it, disinterested in it. Whereas a sexual person is more like, "Oh, I really want that. I'm so excited about it. I really like it. I can't get enough of it. It's really good for me. I really want to do it. I want to do it more. I want to do more sexual stuff, and I want to do more sexual stuff." And I love the fact that, these people are doing whatever in TV programs. I love the fact that magazines have got that. I want to look at it. I want to look at the bodies. I want to think about having sex with this person, that person. I'm sexually attracted to that person. Whereas an asexual person is like, some asexuals are like, take it or leave it. Some asexuals are like really indifferent. There's a more of a neutral or disgust or repulsion. Some asexuals, though, that end up in relationships, for example, long term with a heterosexual person or other sexual people, they might come to terms with the fact that they love their partner and they will be having sex and they don't mind it, or maybe they enjoy the physical closeness. So if they were to not be in that relationship with a sexual person, they could probably, again, take it or leave it, not be bothered by it, not want it, not need it, not desire it. But because they're actually with that sexual person, they might like that time with them because they know the sexual person enjoys it and they like to see their partner happy and enjoying themselves, even if they're not that bothered about it. They might like the bodily sensations it gives them. They might like the closeness it gives them. So some asexuals are sex positive, some asexuals do have sex, but a lot of the time asexuals are coming from a different innate place within themselves compared to sexuals. The innate feeling for a lot of asexuals, we don't want, need, or urge for sex. Having a having an acceptance about having sex with a sexual partner, if you're asexual, and wanting to be physically close like that with them, is not the same as really wanting the sex in and of itself. If you were to take away that person, would you still want sex? Would you still be happy to have sex? Would you still be thinking, I really want to do this? Usually, no. It'd be kind of like, it's because you're with that person, love that specific person, that gives the whole experience some meaning and closeness and validation, if you like, of you doing that. But in the main, asexuals would not be bothered about doing that if they weren't actually in that relationship with the sexual person. It's not something they deeply, innately need and desire and want and crave, whereas a sexual person does. If a sexual person was to split up with that person, they would be with someone else in a few months or a year's time or whatever, or sometimes even quicker than that, a few weeks, few days maybe. You know what I'm saying? They really need it, they crave it, they want it. It's like how they're wired, it's what they want. So this is how it's very different between asexuals and sexuals, even if asexuals or some asexuals have sex. It's like the asexual usually isn't driven. They're not driven to instigate things with their partner. If they've got a sexual partner, they're not driven to have sex loads. They're not driven to be sexual. They're not driven to desire sex in this innate thing. Innate means coming from within, like within you, like a root. Like, you have trees and plants and flowers that have roots. This is how they flourish, shine, and grow. It's like the asexual doesn't have those roots for sex, but the sexual person does. The sexual person has these roots and they have these nutrients they grow up in. And part of the nutrients and the things they crave are sex to grow their tree, if you like. Whereas that asexual person can just admire the beautiful, pretty flowers without needing the sex. Their roots are very different. Does that make sense? I'm trying to kind of describe the difference between an asexual person and a sexual person, because there's some asexuals that have sex, but we have to understand that it's usually coming from a different place within inside the person. The asexual person can usually take it or leave it. They don't need it. It's a sexual person that needs it. So an asexual person is not repressing themselves. They're not suppressing themselves. They're not pushing down a need, urge, or want for sex that they don't have in the first place. Whereas a sexual person, if they're abstaining from sex, would be repressing and suppressing that need and desire and urge for sex, or stopping themselves from marriage, or they're just not having the sex they want, the amount of sex they want, because they can't get it. It always makes me feel a bit strange when I hear a sexual person go, oh, I'm gonna, if I wanted sex, I'd hire a prostitute, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, I get guys in my inbox, or especially when I was actively on dating sites, which I'm not active on them anymore. I used to get guys in my inbox all the time wanting sex with me. Even now, I'd have loads of guys wanting sex with me. I don't have to pay for guys to have sex with me if I wanted sex. Whereas heterosexual guys come to me and say about paying for someone's sex, or they can't get sex. And I'm just like, it's so easy to get sex. It's the fact I don't want sex that's important to me, and I'm not interested in it. Do you know what I mean? So I remember when I was in one of my old jobs, and this girl, because I was when I knew I was asexual, and this girl was like, how do you get all the men that want sex with you? Because she really loves sex. And I'm like, I just end up attracting the highly sexual guys when I'm not interested in sex at all. And so she used to get a bit frustrated that she ended up with guys who weren't really into having that much sex or at all. And I used to get the guys that always wanted sex. But I'm not interested in sex. I'm really not. I love kissing and cuddling. Kissing is my excitement thing. But I'm happy being single for the foreseeable future. I'm really happy being single and loving on me. So anyway, the best person to love is yourself. And if you're new to Asexuality in this channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to get Asexual Perspectives book on Amazon. You can also get it from Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, Blackwell's, and all good bookshops. And also get a copy of my bestseller, Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic 78 Life Lessons to Asexual Life, which is now available besides ebook and paperback. It's also available as a hard book. So go out and grab a copy of that on Amazon as well. And I'll see you soon on the next video live stream. Lots of love. Thank you for being here. And as always, let's celebrate our diversity across the asexual spectrum and our differences within it. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. And share it with someone. I love you. Take care. Bye. Stay ace.